So welcome everyone. My name's Nancy Moore. I'm the Director of Programs for Africa Fire Mission. It's good to see everyone here today. And I know we'll have some others join us. I just want to thank you for coming and for giving your time and your data and your knowledge to continue to learn and grow as a firefighter. So as we get started today, I just wanted to remind you that we'd love to connect with you either in the WhatsApp groups or on our networking group on Africa Fire Mission's networking group on Facebook. I'll put the link here for you to get involved that way. As most of you that are here know, we don't issue certificates of completion for these courses, but encourage you to share this information with others, encourage you to continue to join and be a part of your ongoing training as firefighters. It's such an important part of your job, is to continue to learn to be the best you can be. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Jose to get us started with some words of encouragement.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. We are so happy to host everyone. Thanks, Brad, for finding time to join us. And everyone, Luftan, we have guys from KU, that's Peter, Duncan. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate you. So today we're going to have I'm going to have a read on the encouragement, and I'll read through. I have brought you glory on earth. That's, you can read that from John chapter 17 verse 4. I'll continue reading the encouragement. Joseph's brother despised his dream, so they threw him into a pit. Jesus' family didn't understand his calling. One time, they actually thought he was mad. Yet, when he reached the end of his life, he could actually say, I have brought you glory on earth by finishing the work you gave me to do. If you wait for everybody to understand and agree with you, you'll never do what God called you to do. In the latter part of the 19th century, when the Methodists were holding a denominational convention, one leader stood up and shared his vision for both the church and the society at large. He told his fellow ministers how he believed that someday men would fly from one place to place instead of traveling on horseback. It was a concept too outlandish for many in the audience to handle. One man, Bishop Wright, stood up and furiously protested harshly. Fight is reserved for the angels. He went on to say that if God had intended man to fly, he would have bestowed him with wings. Clearly, the bishop was unable to envision what the speaker was predicting. When he finished his protest, he collected his two sons, Orville and Wilbur, and left the auditorium. That's right, his sons was the famous Orville and Wilbur Wright. And several years later, on 17th December 1903, they did what their father had declared impossible. They recorded the first human flight. Understand this, many people prefer the comforts of the past to the risk of the future. If you need their support and approval, you'll never do what God called you to do. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for calling us into this great purpose to serve your people, to protect property and lives. We ask you that you give us courage and have confidence in doing what you called us to do. Let us seek approval from you than seek approval from man. Lord, we ask you that you continue protecting our families and everybody who we serve. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Brad, the floor is yours. Take us through, sir.
Thank you, Jose. Good afternoon, I guess, for you guys there. It's morning for me. My name is Brad Fiore. I'm fire chief for the Cottekill Volunteer Fire Company. Been in the fire service for coming up on 35 years. I've been the chief of the department for the last 21 and a half years. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some topic which I know is a struggle there, water supply. Before we get started with the slideshow, and it's a short slideshow, I don't tend to bog up with a lot of slides. But I do have some questions for you. Just give me some background of what you're dealing with there. I guess first off, I've done a little research. My understanding is that most of your apparatus is coming from Europe. So I understand that they're smaller, shorter units, small, what we would consider small tanks on the apparatus. But I guess, what type of structures you're dealing with, what types of fires you're dealing with. I just want a little background from the different regions. If people want to just chime right on in. Your area, what kind of structures are you dealing with there? Are you dealing with, single family homes? Are they smaller homes? Are they bigger buildings? Any, commercial type buildings? Okay, so Jose reporting commercial type buildings. Okay, so we can be looking at larger structure. It's going to require a lot of water if they're well involved. What types of water supply systems do you have in place now? My understanding is hydrants are not my understanding is that hydrants aren't very prevalent, or a lot of times aren't working. My area, we don't have hydrants at all. We have to bring all of our. So Peter, you do have hydrants. Good. Okay.
So I'll jump in here for a second. Guys, this is Brad's first time training for AFM. So he's learning and wants to learn alongside of you as we talk about water systems. So if anything that you'd like to contribute to help him understand your areas and your situations will be really beneficial today.
Is anybody relying strictly on what's carried on the trucks? Or do you do any what we call drafting, taking water from ponds or streams?
Peter mentioned a lot of water Bowsers are used, or water trucks.
Water trucks, all right, so
Are
water, okay.
used.
Yeah, we would, here in the States, we refer to them, well, on the East Coast, we refer to them as tankers. On the West Coast, they're tenders.
Yeah.
But I understand the term that you're using. That's great. Okay. So let me.
And I would add on too, as you get started, and I think you and Ed talked about this a little bit. Peter mentioned hydrants. Would it be true to say that, guys, that hydrants are sometimes hit or miss on whether or not they're working? I think that's often the case where they may not,
Sure.
Some may be working or may not be working at full capacity.
Okay.
And so And then also in some communities, hydrants that are accessible for refilling trucks might be miles away, kilometers away, several kilometers.
Okay.
Yep.
And now Ed had mentioned to me that there's a, you don't want to contaminate your tanks. I assume then, are the fire trucks also carrying the water for drinking purposes?
I believe the Bowsers are, but
Okay,
not
not the-
necessarily the fire truck
not the actual
apparatus.
engines themselves? Okay,
Mhm.
I gotcha. All right, so that does pose an issue with what we call a tanker shuttle or a Bowser shuttle. All right, so let me share the screen here. Okay, everybody seeing the screen? We good?
Yes, we're good.
All right. All right, so real basic, water is our primary agent for extinguishing fires. Its biggest thing is its cooling effect. Okay, it is going to change to steam at 212 degrees. You know, your wood fires are starting at around 350 degrees. So, you know, the cooling effect of water is what is extinguishing the fires for the most part. We do have some smothering effect, but that's, you know, when you apply so much water onto a small fire, that's what's happening there. And the big thing is your steam is displacing a lot of your heat and smoke and gases. Now, this is something that I speaking with Ed, he's mentioned you don't necessarily calculate what we call fire flows. What fire flows are is determining the amount of water required to extinguish a fire. Is anybody having target flows of how much water you're putting onto a fire, or even on your first line, your first hand line or hose line, what your target flow is out of those lines? Okay. Here in the States, we have basically two major methods that the fire service use. The Iowa method, developed in the 1950s through Iowa University. It's based on live test flows, but you know, so it's all based on science, and it's used for a single contents or a single compartment, and mostly used for operating at a fog nozzle or fog stream, and for a short period of time. So your required flow would be taking the length times the width times the height and dividing it by 100. Okay, the 100 is cubic feet of steam created from half a gallon of water. And that will determine how much water you're supposed to put onto this fire to extinguish it in gallons per minute. Now, I know we have a conversion into liters. The second method used is the National Fire Academy method that was developed in the 80s at the Fire Academy. And it's based on real live firefighting, not based on science, not based in a lab of any sort or anything like that. It's taken from what experienced fire officers out in the field have known to work. And it's designed off of an offensive or an interior fire operation or fire attack, direct attack, which means not using a fog stream, more of a straight stream, or if you're using smoothbore nozzles. And its calculation incorporates the attack line, the backup line, as well as exposure protection. And this one's, although the formula at the bottom looks a little more difficult, it's actually a little easier in the field than the Iowa method. This is just taking the length times width and dividing it by 3. And then you take 25% for an exposure, and you times it by the percent of involvement. So in a scenario of a 10 by 30 room, you come up with 300 divided by 3, so it's only 100 gallons per minute is required for that 10 by 30 foot room. All right. If you have an exposure, you add another 25%, so you're up to 125 gallons. And that's at 100% of involvement, if that entire compartment of 10 by 30 was fully involved. In the US, we use no less than 150 gallons per minute, which is a little more than 500 liters per minute in a comparison. So again, looking for some people to chime in, jump in with what your target flows are. You know, how much water are you flowing out your initial attack line? Anybody? About Chris.
You could kindly repeat the question?
Sure. So looking to see how much water you're flowing out of your initial attack line. The nozzles are rated at so many, I guess in your case it would be liters per minute, whether it be a smoothbore nozzle or a fog nozzle. And that's all depending on how much pressure you put to the nozzle, but it's flowing a certain amount of water. And usually they're either preset to a certain amount, or you can change that setting on the nozzle itself, depending on the nozzle. Smooth bores are a constant flow, so you get 50, PSI, or I guess that's 3.5 bar if you're using the European, the metric side of things. So just looking at, how much water is coming out your initial attack line. What's your minimum?
The operators in the house. Peter Muturi, I throw you on deep end.
Okay.
The pump operators. Might you be having any answer to that?
I think the question is much directed to the pump operators.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess another question is, are you using the high pressure side of the pump? Because I know the European apparatus has a high pressure versus a low pressure side. So are you using like the, if I remember correctly, the 19 or 22 millimeter hose reels, or are you using your, the hose rolls and going like a 45 millimeter?
We actually use both.
You do, okay.
The hose reel and the high pressure. They come out both as a high pressure.
Okay, so you are running the high pressure. Okay, so that does, that's a concept that's just starting to take off in the US. We run mostly on the low pressure side of things, and moving volumes of water versus pressure. I've seen the high pressure in action, and I'm impressed with it. It does use a lot less water, which is good in your case. And I know on smaller fires, smaller structures, it does a pretty good job of containing it with just what's on board. I guess another question I have for you is, using, being you have such limited water supply, how often are you running out of water, but still have firefighting left to do? I mean, is that like an every fire thing, or is it just depending on the size of the building, or?
The floor is open for the questions to be answered, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, Peter. Go ahead, sir.
I think in Kenyatta University, if I run out of water, I'll go to the hydrant at the field, or I call the water booster to come and refill the water for me.
Okay. Okay, so you are running out of water before your fire attack is complete. Okay.
Yeah.
All righty.
Hello.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Most of the time when we run short of water while we are in the scene, most of the time we considered that we are from Kajiado, where there's a lot of water shortage, unless we get water boozers from well-wishers or the owners who will also conduct or arrange how the water will reach to us. But most of the time we do run short of water, and at times we have to escape. We don't have an alternative of getting water, so we have to run for our safety, because the crowds most of the time they become rude at us.
Okay. That's definitely an issue. This whole, running out of water and then having to, run out. I guess where I would say with situations in that instance, knowing that every drop of water counts, and continual training on water application. And we call, putting the wet stuff on the red stuff. Especially if there's a life hazard, life always comes before property, and positioning that hand line between the victims and the fire is crucial, especially when you have a limited water supply, and to be able to make that rescue. And I'm not sure what your staffing levels are. Again, in my area, We are a rural fire department, and with a very short staffed ourselves, and we rely on our neighbors, and we're volunteers, all 100% volunteers, and we rely on neighboring departments to assist us both with the water and the personnel. So I definitely can understand some of the challenges that you experience. And again, we don't have hydrants at all, so we're bringing all the water that we need with us. We are fortunate enough that our neighboring departments are only a few minutes away, versus I know that some of you have extended periods of time before you see another department show up or another piece of apparatus show up. But getting that line in position and making sure that every drop counts is extremely important. All right, so again, doing my research on the UK side of things. This here is coming from a Scottish manual, where these are the flows that you should be, your target flows in the liters per minute based on a European scale of things. Again, I showed you what the US uses with the Iowa method and the National Fire Academy method. And so under the housing, they're talking with no more than 2 floors, you're getting up to the, like that 500 liters per minute. So this here, I believe, is probably, this 480 liters per minute, around 100 gallons a minute, a little lower than what we would typically put into a fire. But again, if you're using the high pressure, you're probably using a lot less water. Again, it's a tactic that I'm not 100% familiar with. If you're using it, I would definitely, train on it as much as you can. And when you get into the bigger buildings, you're getting into a lot more water. And I don't know if you can sustain some of these types of flows with some of these bigger buildings, getting up to 1,200, 4,500 liters per minute. But again, though, this is not over an extended period of time. These calculations are based on trying to put the fire out within a few minutes, all right, or at least knocking it down. If that's your goal, knock the fire down. Get as much water as you can onto the seat of the fire, and get it so that it's manageable, so that if you are waiting an extended period of time for additional water and equipment, that you're buying that time for you before it starts to take off again. Okay, so getting into the types of water supplies that that you have available, or I won't say have available, but the different types that are potential for you is your onboard tanks, right? So your water boozers, and then your engines, right? Smaller engines at 1,800 liters, and then you have up to your the UK would consider a rural engine at 3,700 liters. It does match what's in the US as far as the quantity of water. A city engine is around 500 gallons, and a rural engine like ours are 1,000 gallons of water. What we call tankers or tenders, up to 9,500 liters. I'm not sure what you're using over there for your water boozers or how much water is being carried on them. And I assume then are you pumping off of them, or do you drop that water into a reserve holding tank? Anybody?
I think the where we get water bosa from the hydrant.
Okay, and once
Or
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
or you can have a borehole, and the tank is elevated high. So if you pump water from the borehole, it go to those tank that are elevated high. So if you come with the water bosa, you just open the water, then put it to the water bosa.
Okay, so is the water boozer then pumping into a hose line into the attack engine, or do you use like a holding tank to drop the water in, and then an engine at the scene pumps water out of the holding tank?
From the water bosa to the fire engine, we have a pump.
Okay.
That is mounted on the fire the water bosa.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So you're pumping off. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gives me some background there, some understanding how it works. That's great. We've already talked about hydrants. They are a direct water supply. Speaking with Ed again, not doing too much relay pumping because I know it could be miles before you see your first working hydrant. And then the static water supplies, like you had mentioned, the boreholes. I don't know if you have the capacity to be able to draw from a pond or rivers, streams. We can show you a little bit about that. Okay, so again, the onboard tank is in limited supply. All right, once you're out, you got to shut down, and either if you're using, especially if you're using the hose reels, that I would imagine could cause a problem. You'd have to reel that back up to be able to get the engine out of there. Versus if you're using your rolled hose, you can at least break that off from the discharge and leave the hose at the scene and go to the hydrant to fill up. The onboard tank water is good for initial knockdown. But again, you do need a good water supply to be able to sustain any lengthy firefighting. Okay. In the States, areas that do have hydrants, lucky enough that they are, most of them are all working, and they are required to be every 500 feet away, or a distance between hydrants is 500 feet. And they're just laying lines from the hydrant to the attack engine, and that's a constant water supply. This here is what we call drafting. We will use any body of water to supply water to a fire scene, whether it be through shuttling water through like a water boozer or going directly to the scene through hose lines, what we call a relay pumping. Its only limitation is the size of the pump of the engine that's drafting out of the pond. Typically, that's you put the largest pump at the water source, and that'll push the water to the scene or be able to fill the tankers or boozers a lot quicker. Now, if you were to get into relay pumping, if you had a water source nearby, the one thing that you do need to consider is friction loss. And what happens as the water travels through hose lines, it decreases in pressure the further you go. So you're not getting quite the volume of water that you need at the scene or getting into the fire. It's also going to happen with your hose lines. The longer you make your hose lines, the less water you're going to get out the other end without increasing the pressure. So this chart here gives you how much friction you're losing in bars and per liters per minute, depending on the size hose line you're using. So if you have to go a long distance, you want a larger hose. What is the largest size supply line or hose line that you guys carry?
We have a 70 millimeter.
You do have 70. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's what we would consider like a 2.5 inch line on our side. So on the 70 meter, depending on your flow rates, you can see right here, these are your how many bar you're going to lose in the distance that you're going. So you really can't go that far on the 70 millimeter without losing a lot of pressure. All right. Now, if you double up, you can get yourself a lot further. So if you drop two 70 millimeters from a water source to the scene, if it's close enough. Again, I understand hydrants can be far and few between, but if you've got one that's reasonably close that you can, and you have enough hose, if you were to put down two 70 millimeters, you'll overcome that friction loss. Okay. So we call a tanker shuttle. All right. Bringing the water with the water carriers. I also see that in Europe that they're not doing what we do here in the States. That we tend to put down holding tanks, what we call drop tanks, in the rural setting. It offloads the water a lot quicker. I have a slide in a short video indicating that or depicting that. But pumping off works, but then you are limited to the pump size on the water boozer as far as how much water you're putting onto the fire. So this here is a holding tank. Okay, again, they pump off into it. And then either with a portable pump, or with a drafting right from the an engine at the scene, they can supply the attack engine. Again, though, you are limited to the pump size on the water carriers, how quickly they can get water into that holding tank. Now, here in the States, this is my department operating a drill with a few other neighboring departments. This year is one of our neighbors. This is their tanker or water carrier. And I brought it into the video a little bit long, further into the video so that it just going to jump ahead a little bit and give you an idea of the how the operation is working. So there's the attack engine. We're running a 4-inch line from the source engine, tracking out of the holding tank. So I get that this type of operation is probably not something that you're used to. I do know that at one point during one of the missions over there, they did something similar to this, trying to use a holding tank. I did read the blog on that. I don't know if you have the resources to be able to try this. But it might be able to supply you water a little quicker than pumping off. That gives you a little background, a little basics on water supply. Does anybody have any questions on water supply?
The floor is open for anybody who might be having any question. Peter, no questions.
For now, I don't have any question.
Sorry, I'm on your case because you're one of our chief operators.
Yeah.
You're the ones who feed us with water when we want it. Water on. Yeah. The floor is open. Anybody would ask any question.
Wondering if we take a moment and have folks go into a brief breakout. just to talk about your current operations and to think about how you might be able to apply or even conduct a drill with some of these ideas and improve your water supply. So would that be okay with you, Brad, if we did just a brief breakout?
Sure.
All right. So we're going to do a 5-minute breakout, and I want you to think quickly. Maybe we'll do 7 minutes. I want you to think quickly about, I know some of you feel like the water operations are not my job. They're not my role. But everyone has a role in water supply and helping to make sure that the water is supplied correctly and that you're using it well. So what are some things that you could do to improve your water operations with some of the ideas that have been shared here? So we'll move, I'm going to put us into 4 breakout rooms for you to just have a brief conversation here. And the rooms are now open. Welcome back, everyone, and hope you were able to have some discussion. Brad, I'll pass it back to you.
So in the group that I was in, we had discussed that they are a coastal department, so the I guess the salt water is playing some havoc on their engines, and they wind up with some leaks, and they're pretty much single engine companies and relying solely on what they're carrying with very few hydrants and very limited access to water. So it poses a very big challenge for them. There's another group want to bring in what their challenges were and what kind of solutions they may have came up with.
Group 1, I was in group 1. Patrick, Mr. Patrick Ingori, sir.
Okay.
Well, hang on a second, Patrick.
Availability of water. Number 2 is enough resources like fire engine. Like I saw you have a fire that an engine that can a boozer that can supply water while the fire engine is used to attack. One, we said we can by building a tank, a high level tank, and having water in stock already. Then maybe as you bring water, you can talk to those water boozers. We have in Kenya, we have private water companies or people, individual who supply water. Is just to talk to them and include them, that's a solution. Include them in part of responders so that when we are having fire, they can just, as creating user salvage sheet, create where they can give us water or supply to the engine that is used. Because recently what we do is when you run out of water, you say, knock off and make up, you disconnect, run for water, then come back. But now if we talk to them, we can ensure that we have water to fight, enough water to fight fire. Secondly is talk to those in authority. We have people like the water company, that supply company within, and also a mandate to all firefighters is to ensure that it is their mandate to assess fire hydrants, ensure they are working, nothing is obstructing them. And if they are not working, consult and ensure that they are in working condition and create awareness and give people the importance of not building on top or next to a fire hydrant, the risk of blocking a fire hydrant, and ensuring that during emergencies we have enough water and we can be in a position to fight fire. Also create a salvage sheet where if you're having 2 fire engines, one is going for water while one is being used to put off fire, the rest is supplying water to salvage. Use of salvage sheet, we make a dam.
Good, good.
That's what we learned. It can be a great, just some distance from the fire. One is supplying water and another one is fighting fire. That was group 1 discussion. That's what these noble firemen came up with.
Great, great. That's awesome. How many groups did we have? I didn't see that.
In the end, I think we ended up with 2.
With 2.
I ended
Okay.
up merging some groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, no, that was some great ideas. Getting water companies involved, getting private water hauling companies involved, and yeah, and education to the public and to the municipalities, to the government, of how important this is. These are all things that that all of you can, your organizations, need to fight for, because it's, it's your communities. It's not just their property, but it's their lives that, depends on all this. So whatever can happen, and if, I don't know if it's possible, but just something to try and consider is some of these water boozers. I know that they're used also for hauling drinking water, but if there's any way that you could, get one that could be dedicated just for firefighting. This way you can get water from anywhere. I mean, if there's a pond or a stream, I know you don't want to contaminate your drinking water, which is totally understandable. I mean, you got to have clean water for drinking. But when it comes to saving lives, you need that water supply. And if it's at all possible to get one, to be able to get water from any location and not have to travel so far just to, get clean water to put on a fire. That's one recommendation I would say, if it's at all possible, let's work towards that.
Group 2?
I'm sorry?
Group 2 can get into the discussion.
Okay.
Well, I think Brad represented for group 2. Yeah.
Yeah. The challenges.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No. They have some real issues there of only one engine, and nothing to really back it up with. That's functioning. So again, things there is to work on trying to secure either water boozers, another engine, something to be able to assist with getting more water to your fire scenes. Any other questions?
All right. I'm guessing we may have a few more questions, but what I'd like to do as we get into those, if there are some, is just thank you all for attending and participating today. You were especially quiet today, so I hope that you learned a lot, and we're very grateful for you to attend every time that you can, and we hope you'll encourage others to attend with you, even if it's on the same screen. That's great. We enjoy all of your presence. Please complete the evaluation. I'll be dropping that in the chat here in just a moment. The link for that, you'll also get that via email. You are also welcome, as we mentioned before, to refer back to the trainings from our website and on our YouTube channel. So thanks again for attending. Feel free to stay for questions and to stay for tea time hosted by Jose. Brad, thank you so much for.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank
absolutely.
you all. This was great.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Jose, I'll pass it to you to facilitate going forward.